not just treating the emergency, but also treating a root cause. Why is this happening in the body? What else is happening in my body that is leading these symptoms to occur?
We are moving in this direction of integrated medicine and functional medicine. It's becoming a hot topic, and that's really getting at the root of what's going on, but it's also looking preventatively.
Moms lose 10% of your mineral stores in pregnancy alone. So why we see symptoms like hair loss, brittle nails, your teeth, right, really suffer, and you start to see issues during pregnancy is because those are really impacted by your minerals.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wellness for Life. I'm your host, Niki Wolf, and today I am joined by Atara, a mental health expert with nearly 14 years of experience. She specializes in holistic healing, trauma therapy, anxiety, and couples counseling. Through her private practice, Atara is passionate about the mind-body connection and specifically how minerals play a key role in mental health. She'll also share her personal journey with postpartum anxiety and how balancing minerals have helped her. Thank you so much for being here, Atara.
I love it, Niki. We're going to do it all today, huh? We're just going to hit all the points. I love it.
Exactly. I think it's so important. I mean, all these conversations around health, but I don't think minerals get enough of a show, or maybe show is not the word. It's all, vitamins, but minerals are so crucial, so important. And we're going to dive into, what are some of these symptoms if you are, at an imbalance with these minerals. But before we dive into all kind of the nitty gritty with that, I always like laying the foundation, getting to know our guest a little bit more. How did you get to where you are now? Why are you passionate about minerals, mental health, and this whole conversation?
Yeah. So again, my background, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I really began my journey strictly in mental health and working in community clinics and offering services to the community. And then shortly after graduate school, my body gave out. My body said, we're done. You pushed us too far. And I had a major health crash where I couldn't get out of bed for more than a couple hours without feeling extremely fatigued and having to, rest. And I was 23, 24 at the time, and went, this is not okay. Something's wrong, which led me to my allopathic doctor to get testing. So excited, I'm going to get my lab work back. We're going to figure this out. To only go in a few weeks later and him to go, no, you're fine. And I don't know what to tell you. Maybe eat a raw vegan diet or more greens is what he said. And I looked at it, I was like, I'm on a raw vegan diet right now. That's not what I need. It's not helping. And that led and started my journey. This is about 11 years ago. And I started seeking out alternative practitioners, and we got my neurotransmitters tested, and we found that my fight or flight ones were through the roof. They were literally off the paper, off the charts. My calming neurotransmitters were non-existent. They were bottomed out, which meant I was in this constant anxiety mode. Although I didn't feel anxious, I certainly was very high energy going all of the time. We also tested my sleep and found out I was waking up 17 times a night. So I was unable to enter into that deep rest. And that began my journey. Fast forward to a couple of years later, married and now having children, I had pretty severe postpartum anxiety and rage after my first baby. And that was really alarming to me. I had never been an angry person. Again, I'd never been an anxious person, a worrier, a perseverator around things. It's not my personality. So what is going on? And that's when I got tuned in to minerals. And I'm really thankful, right? Social media online can be a overwhelming place, but it also can be a place of a lot of empowerment and connection. And because minerals changed my mental health and my life so heavily, I knew that the way we're approaching health overall in our culture is not accurate. Separating and even specializing beyond that is not the way to go. We need to look at the body and mind together and the whole person that is before us. And that has got me to where I am. And that is why I'm so passionate about what I do.
I love that so much. I think a lot of us get to a certain career path because of the experiences that we go through, especially if they are traumatic or very heavy. I'm curious, did they ever test for like adrenals? Because I feel like that's all linked. I mean, I know the terminology adrenal fatigue is kind of like thrown around and whatnot, but I can imagine you had some severely depleted adrenals.
Absolutely. And now I think about not actual testing, but certainly I had all of the symptoms of adrenal fatigue. And that is absolutely what I think the minerals targeted was adrenals and really replenishing that, as well as thyroid. I never was tested for hypothyroid, but I met all cold, especially constantly cold. And that was a really clear indicator. After my healing, I figured that out. But that would have been really nice to have known, right, years back. But minerals really addressed and healed a lot of that, all of that.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you used in kind of the terminology allopathic. Can you share with our listeners what that means and how that differs from more of like this functional integrative approach?
Absolutely. So allopathic medicine, and we also commonly call it Western medicine. And that is the approach that we take in the US and culture, which is emergency medicine. It is, another term would be wartime medicine. What that means is that we're responding to a crisis or an emergency. And let me just say, that's beautiful. That is needed. That, someone gets in a car accident, we break an arm. Sure. We want, to be able to put something in a cast so it can heal or have those immediate issues addressed. However, what we also see is this epidemic of root cause issues like I faced of maybe it's fatigue, maybe it's burnout is another word. Maybe it's a thyroid issue, right? Maybe it's being depleted from being on an antidepressant for a very long time or anti-anxiety med, and that has thrown your body and mind into dysfunction. And that is where I see us switching into, which is really cool, is not just treating the emergency, but also treating a root cause. Why is this happening in the body? I'm not deficient in an antidepressant. That's not what's causing this problem. What else is happening in my body that is leading these symptoms to occur?
I love that so much. And thank you for giving that clarification because, and I think you're right, is we are moving in this direction of integrated medicine, functional medicine. It's becoming a hot topic and that's really getting at the root of what's going on, but it's also looking preventatively. What can we do ahead of, the game to ensure that we don't end up with a lot of these chronic illnesses? And to your point, and I've spoken about it many times on the podcast, if I get in a car accident, I'm not rubbing aloe vera on me. Like, get me to a hospital, suture me up, give me everything that I need. But I think that's a one-off. That's a very small proportion of our entire life and landscape. And we really need to be taking this preventative, full body, root cause approach. And so kind of coming back to, the minerals and adrenals and thyroid, I mean, all of those are so linked in terms of these hormonal changes, especially when it comes to postpartum, I have a deep, deep love and passion for, maybe not love and passion, but just a desire to continue this conversation of adrenals, of thyroid, of fatigue and exhaustion, especially for mamas. I know men are out there working so hard, whether that's inside the home or outside the home. But I think a lot of women tend to be overwhelmed and burdened and exhausted, burning the candle at 100 different areas. And so that's going to end up in your body going to some sort of failure. Hopefully it doesn't, but that can be the trajectory if we're not replenishing our body with the ingredients it needs. And I guess that's a perfect way to segue into, let's talk about some of these minerals. We're talking magnesium, calcium, potassium, sodium. Why are these so essential for our body's health and specifically for mental health?
Yes. I love to give this example because I think it's so relatable. We're in our day. You wake up late and you're rushing out the door. You're trying to grab everything you need. You're going through your checklist quickly. Maybe you have a meeting, so you got to look presentable. And you're thinking also about, what do I need later for today? Maybe I need my snack. I got to grab my lunch. And if you're me or another mom, you're yelling at your kids, get your shoes on. Did you brush your teeth? Right? This is a stressed state. Our body has gone up into that fight or flight mode, that rushed. Okay. In this process, you are burning through your magnesium. That magnesium is required for your neurotransmitters to talk to one another, for nerve transmission, for neuromuscular conduction, me to be able to move my muscles in a smooth way, move my hands, grab my bag. Magnesium is used for all of those processes. Okay. Potassium is used when you're trying to think clearly, when you're trying to use that active memory and not get lost or distracted in the chaos. You're using your potassium for that sequence of events. If you don't have enough calcium, you're going to be extra irritable. You're going to feel stressed. You're going to feel on edge. You're also more likely to participate in what we call rumination, where later in the day, maybe I've gotten to work and I'm settling in and I'm trying to answer an email, but I keep thinking back to that 15 minutes of my day and playing that over and over. Oh gosh, I can't believe this. Next time I'm blah, 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 and replaying it over and over. You're going to be more anxious, right? The rest of the day without that protection of calcium. And lastly, sodium, right, helps to keep our nervous system regulated so that I'm able to move through that stress state and not sit in the corner crying about it. So I'm able to be effective. So there's a lot more nuance, obviously, but those are some kind of general sweeps of how minerals impact us.
I love that so much. And I think we've heard a lot. I mean, I think most of us all know these minerals, but I think one of the top ones is magnesium. And we know so many of us are just deficient in this, and we're either not getting it from the right sources. So what would you recommend as far as consuming? I mean, that could be supplementation, but perhaps you have some food sources as well. And specifically with magnesium, there are so many different citrate, glycinate, I think thornate, or, there's so many different variations. What are the ones you recommend and why?
Yeah. So magnesium, so important. And I've actually been really theorizing around this of why are we so deficient? What is happening? Well, one is the food sources, right, that we're consuming. One is that stress, right? We live in such a stressed, busy state. We burn through that so quickly. And mineral water, spring water, is actually a really good source of magnesium, right? Depending on where you're getting it from, but you can see that there's a lot of magnesium. So I was thinking about soaking, right, in natural waters, in mineral, right, the mineral baths or the spas, right? That used to be a really popular thing in ancient times. We just don't do that anymore, right? We don't go sit in those natural spring waters like we used to. So you can get magnesium through the skin, right? Transdermal. We can throw bath flakes into a bath, into a foot soak, and that's one way to get magnesium. For your busy mamas out there, that's actually what I do most often. I get it for my children. I throw a few handfuls in the evening bath, and I put my feet in the bath, and so we're both getting it at the same time. They're getting it, I'm getting it, everyone's happy.
That's a great idea. I didn't even think about doing that.
Yeah.
And
double
one
duty,
thing
right?
too that I think a lot of people get confused on is, do I need to go to the store and look for a bag that says magnesium, or does Epsom salt work? What's the difference there?
Different sources. Yeah. So when you flip that around, Ancient Minerals is the brand that I really love and recommend. And I'm blanking right now on what the back of that bag says, but it is a specific type of magnesium. And that one is a really calming magnesium. So this is something, again, don't start your day with Ancient Minerals foot bath, because you might be, less anxious, but you might be a little tired too. I feel super relaxed after I do this. So we typically do it in the evening. They also have an oil, and it's in a spray form that you can use. I do caution if you have a skin sensitivity, to mix it with another oil because it can burn a little bit. My kids always complain about that one. Earthly as well has a good night lotion, which also has magnesium in it. Those are some really easy ways to get it in. And again, there's the food and water sources. For example, salmon is a fish with a lot of magnesium in it. And then lastly, of course, we can take an oral supplement. So absolutely, if you're first starting out and you know, whoa, I'm probably pretty deficient in magnesium. I struggle to stay calm. I struggle to fall asleep. I have a lot of anxiety. What are the other major really big time? Maybe even the rumination is connected, right? You struggle to get over something. It replays in your mind often. I would definitely say start looking at some magnesium. It was a huge game changer for me. Another really key one is sugar craving. Okay. If you have a very strong sweet tooth, you're probably deficient in magnesium. The reason this is lack of magnesium feeds our sugar craving. We reach for more sugar. We consume more sugar, which depletes our magnesium further. And around we go on this stuck cycle. So that was my really first indicator. My body needed that, is because when I started taking magnesium, my sugar cravings now didn't disappear. I still love a good cookie or ice cream, but I could say no, right? I could say, hey, you know what? I had one yesterday. I don't need one today. Where before it felt like I had to have that, and I was really drawn to it. For me, my favorite sources of magnesium would be Smidge is a wonderful company. And they actually have 3 of those magnesiums in one. It's called the Morning Mag, paired with boron. Boron's another mineral. Minerals are synergistic. They work together in the body. And so boron helps you absorb that magnesium and drives it into the cells.
I love that. That's fantastic. And it sounds like too that these minerals are an effective way to support the whole family. I mean, you mentioned you throw it in with the bath when the kids are taking it, you dunk your feet in there. You can rub it on the whole family. So it's a helpful ingredient that can move the needle for everyone, which I think is fantastic. I was just on a company call this morning, and we were talking about product testimonies, and our main line is kind of like our OG line is our therapeutics brand. So we have formulas with all different ingredients that work synergistically, just like you said. But then we also have a second kind of one-off where they're called the essentials. So they're individual isolated ingredients to help move the needle if you want to stack it with a regular routine. But one of the ingredients is magnesium glycinate. And I'm currently 6 months pregnant, and you know, there's a lot of limitations on what you can and cannot take. Obviously, on discretion with the mama, you follow your gut, talk to your physician, you do what's best, because it, you know, it can be all over the place. But magnesium, I feel very comfortable taking. So it's one of the only things I can do to take at night to help me sleep, because 6 months pregnant, and maybe you experience this, like sequential pregnancies, you pop quicker, you get bigger. Like I feel like my belly is so much bigger. And so nighttime is just a really difficult time for me. You're tossing and turning. But when I started taking the magnesium glycinate, I sleep so much better. I have an Aura ring I was telling the company, and you can track your REM sleep, your deep sleep, all this stuff. Granted, my husband and I, we prioritize sleep. Like we're in bed at 8:30 every single night because we know our daughter's up early. We just know it's important. On average, with a toddler and being pregnant, I get 8.5 hours of sleep minimum.
Yes, girl. Yes.
Plus like I don't know, was it an hour and a half, 2 hours of deep and REM, like a crazy, crazy amount. And the nights that I'm not taking magnesium, I'm waking up, my latency, our ability to fall asleep. And so I mean, I can back that up. I think it is such a crucial mineral that I think everybody should be taking, whether you're pregnant, whether you're not, if you struggle with stress or just like muscle fatigue, digestion.
Yes.
It's important for so many things.
For so many things. It's responsible for over 3,000 functions in our body.
That's wild.
It was wild. So if you're missing it, those functions aren't able to happen properly. I love that you mentioned pregnancy too, because another one I see so commonly, muscle cramps.
Yeah.
You getting that Charlie horse at night? Yeah. take
I
some
haven't gotten
magnesium.
that. Have you ever heard of round ligament? I mean, you've had 4, so.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. But you know what? It's part of the package when we take on like creating a human life in here. I'm like, it's the balance and like looking at things. But yeah, sometimes in the moment it can be like really, really challenging.
Yeah. And so this is interesting too. We were talking on Instagram, on this woman's Instagram. She's my mineral guru. Shout out to Nutritional Elements Kaylee. She's amazing. We're talking about pelvic floor tightness and whether magnesium impacts pelvic floor tightness. And get this, Niki, my first 3 labors, 32 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. Then I got my minerals on board, 5-hour labor.
Wow.
Whoa. Wow. That's a big difference, right? So I suspect those might be connected as well.
Well, we could just keep them coming and test it out and see if we can get a 1-hour one next.
Right.
I'm done. Very cool. Wow, that's super cool. Yeah, we do a lot with our company. We do a lot of work with pelvic floor too. And that was just something I think of more of like, okay, balancing the stress, but I didn't think of how connected it can be. Okay, I might be upping my dose a little bit. So you mentioned a few other, like you mentioned boron. Besides these main ones of the magnesium, the sodium, the calcium, can you kind of throw out like boron, like you said, or some of these other minerals that maybe aren't as commonly heard of and what these are supportive for?
Yep. Selenium. Selenium is super important. The biggest impact for selenium in my own health and life has actually been my eyes. And you can see I'm still working on it because I still wear glasses and contact lenses occasionally. But my prescription has actually decreased twice because of selenium. So particularly in pregnancy, I was attempting to have a healthy birth I was GBS positive twice. One of my babies was in the NICU because of group strep B. GBS is, is what GBS is. And it's an overgrowth of a bacteria that can pass to baby and then make baby septic. And that's what happened with baby number 2. Yeah, it was pretty scary. We almost lost her. And so so selenium helps support the body. And again, to go back to eyes particularly, helps support eye health. And so I was pregnant with my 4th and I went to go get my prescription checked and he went, "Wait, weren't you a -4 before?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, you're down -3.50. And I was like, "Oh yeah." Like I wasn't surprised, but he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm high dosing selenium right now." And he went, like he wrote it down. He was like, "What? That's so cool." So, let's be a little specific on that. We do not want to high dose, synthetic, non-natural. We want a food source for high selenium, and that would be called Selenexol. And, Swanson's has a good brand. Do you guys carry that?
So we don't have like an essentials of selenium, but selenium is in a handful of our products. I believe we have it in our thyroid because I'm pretty positive selenium is very linked to thyroid health. Exactly. I also know when you talk food source, Brazil nuts are, I think it's like 1 Brazil nut is the equivalent for an entire daily like value of selenium.
Yes. Super popular source. It just can be hard because, of course, Brazil nuts, the soil that it's grown in has to be selenium rich. So it has to pull the selenium from the soil to the nut. So it can be a little inconsistent depending on where the nut is from, and you have to test it. So, absolutely eat your Brazil nuts, and that's going to be helpful. But if you really, really want to make sure you're targeting this, if you're struggling with thyroid, you're like, "Yeah, Tara, I want to heal my eyes," I would say do it and both. Get the Selenexol. Totally. And eat your Brazil nuts because they're getting more nutrition out of that as well. So yeah, that's a great source.
Absolutely. Okay. That's a great idea. You mentioned boron. I don't really know much about boron. What is it? Why is it beneficial? And maybe what are some of the symptoms, if we're depleted in boron?
Yeah, to be honest, Niki, I don't know that much about boron either.
Oh,
All I know about boron is that when paired with magnesium, it helps us absorb magnesium. But I do know 2 others that are super important. We know a lot about zinc, and we know that zinc,
yes, tell us.
Zinc is important. Zinc is helpful. Zinc also is pretty important for mental health. And why that is it's pretty popular and well known now that the gut is the second brain. right? So what's happening in the gut directly correlated, right? There is a neurotransmission, a whole highway network that directly is connected from our brain to our gut. So zinc is really important to help us digest food properly, right? And it helps build that, all of that secretion that we need in our digestive system to properly digest the food and absorb the nutrients for the food. What I love about minerals is they are foundational. So no matter what you're struggling with, if you focus on getting your minerals right, you will for sure use the phrase move the needle. I love that because you'll for sure see the needle moved in whatever you're struggling with, whether it's a digestive issue, whether it's thyroid, whether it's mental health, right? If you are focusing on minerals, it won't resolve it all the way. You probably need some supportive care focused in on that. But if you start with this foundation, it's going to help you, like guarantee. And I love that.
And you know what I think is so great about that is it starts this process. It builds the momentum. You start getting, it's kind of like working out. Like it's really hard in the very beginning and you're not going to jump from like a couch potato to doing a marathon, but you start taking these baby steps and you start noticing, okay, I have a little more energy, or okay, I'm starting to notice a difference in my body. It creates this momentum to want to continue the change, maybe implement more tools, maybe pull back some of the negative things. And so what you just said is, you know, if you're a little bit overwhelmed and you're not feeling great, you're super fatigued, your brain fog is elevated, starting with minerals can at least start the process where you start coming out of these clouds. You can think a little bit more critically. And now you might be at a spot where, okay, I'm ready to take on something else and maybe bring in some other tools and implementations, because sometimes in the beginning, you almost feel paralyzed. You don't know what to do. You don't know where to start.
Absolutely. And that's exactly how I work with clients, and why I work one-on-one is because sure, we can make broad statements, but if someone is presenting with anxiety, or a client that I have in mind where he was extremely exhausted and had more of that fatigue, burnout, we're going to start in a different place. At the end of our time together, we're going to have all the same foundational things in, but where we're going to start is going to be different for you, right? So with that anxiety, maybe we're going to start with magnesium, versus the energy. We're going to start with some of those like zinc, copper, heavy minerals to get that energy back into the body, so that we then feel like, okay, now I can go and make a healthy meal. Right? My client that had such exhaustion, he's like, I can't even feed myself properly. I know that, but because my energy is so low. So I said, great, let's start there. Let's get some of that energy back by getting these focused minerals in. And then you can go and add that next step that feels so overwhelming. Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, so you're exactly right. I love it.
You touched upon zinc, and I think a lot of us know zinc for immune health. That's a really common one. I remember reading a study forever ago. First off, touching back into the power and influence zinc has on your immune health. And with the pandemic and everything happening, people start freaking out about zinc. But I guess there was a study a few years back of a high proportion of young men being hospitalized for zinc deficiency. Well, goes to show that when men ejaculate, they lose a tremendous amount of zinc. So I'm like, for those, I mean, one thing that I want to get into is, you know, let's pinpoint some individuals and why should they start be focusing on consuming minerals? I mean, maybe young boys, if that's, or older men. You know, if you're very sexually active, that's something to really consider, because it's affecting so many different areas of our body. And to know, I mean, I wish I had like the number of how much zinc you're losing, but I think that's really important. Also, I think of breastfeeding moms. I'm guessing you're probably depleting your minerals. I think of athletes. I think of very stressed out individuals. So I don't know if we want to kind of dive into any of those particular individuals, and if you have anybody else that comes to mind that I'm like, okay, these people should really be honing in on this.
Yeah. I definitely will start with mamas, because that's the population I work with most. And then, you know, you and I bonded over being moms and pregnancy and all that. So moms lose 10% of your mineral stores in pregnancy alone. So why we see symptoms like hair loss, brittle nails, your teeth, right, really suffer, and, you start to see issues during pregnancy is because those are really impacted by your minerals. And when our minerals are being diverted from going to our body to support baby, right? That's where they go first. And then we start to see the symptoms of that. Morning sickness is another huge one that I've seen in mamas. So 10% gone. And then we don't even talk about, and there's no research done on then how much after baby comes out and you are breastfeeding. We don't even know. We do know that we're commonly under eating, and we're also often under eating nourishing foods. That's super important. In that postpartum phase, hey, I've been 4 times. I know you're gonna right? You're reaching for things that you're just like, just get some food in my body, because that hunger is so intense. That if we can prepare things ahead of time, and a great practical example would be stock or bone broth in your freezer if you can tolerate it, right? And just having that so you can pull it out, heat it up in your pan and get sipping on that through your day. Healing the gut with a good amount of collagen in there, some good minerals and nutrients, B vitamins, some of those potassium, calcium, like we talked about, all nourishing the body through that process. And also you're feeding, right? You're feeding and nourishing yourself. And then that also translates to some good breast milk. But I'm all about strategizing how we can do this practically. So another example, 98% of Americans are deficient in potassium. It's a lot. That's a lot of us, right? And great source of potassium, my 2 favorites, coconut water. I really love coconut water. And so I'll do that with a squeeze of lime, a little salt in there. I'm getting my vitamin C. Oh, it's so good.
That sounds good. Okay.
It's really good. Vitamin C, you're getting your potassium hit, and then you're getting a little of that high quality sodium in there. And that, you're talking about adrenals earlier, will bring your adrenals back to life. So if you're really hitting that like 2:30, 3 o'clock slump, that's something that you really want to incorporate. The other option for potassium that I love, sweet potatoes or potatoes in general. Who doesn't love potatoes, right? Almost everyone that I talk to, heck yeah. So sweet potatoes, I will prep them for the week. So I will bake 4 to 5 sweet potatoes and just stick them in a Tupperware. And then on a busy morning, pull them out, heat them up, slap a little grass-fed butter on there. Again, sprinkle with salt and pepper. So good. I'm loving it. With your protein first, of course. And it's just a good hit of that high quality food early in your day.
I love those 2 options because I think our go-to is bananas. And I generally eat relatively low carb, and I'm pretty conscious of my fruit consumption. Even during pregnancy, obviously I listen to my body and what it needs, but I think that's always our go-to. And so I love these, alternative options. And you talk about this like beautiful adrenal mocktail, which I think of, and I probably don't drink coconut water enough. I do love it after I haven't really done a strenuous workout in quite some time, but I think it's really good to help replenish the body, and adding that lime sounds absolutely incredible. The sweet potatoes too. I think for those of us listening, I don't know, I talk to so many clients and friends and they're like, well, how do you make that? I know this isn't necessarily a part of this, but I think it's just kind of cool to walk through, and maybe now they can walk away with this like practical, this is how I do it. Are you just roasting the sweet potato whole, wrapping it in foil? So you're just doing it whole. Do you poke in it?
I poke a couple holes. Maybe if I'm feeling fancy, throw some olive oil on the outside and then bake at 350 for, I don't know. Sometimes I lose track. I'm like, oh yeah, my sweet potatoes. And I go back and get them out, but until they're soft, basically. Yeah. And then I just take those whole and I'll throw them in the Tupperware. And then when the morning comes that, oh yeah, I need some of that, I will pull that out, open it up. I'll heat it up. If I'm really honest, most mornings it's in the microwave. Don't love using the microwave, but sometimes it's what needs to happen. And I will eat, again, another great source is bacon. Niki.
Bacon. Of potassium.
Yeah, potassium. So bacon is higher in potassium than a banana. Fantastic. So yes, culturally, banana has taken, the highlight for potassium, but most of it's in the peel, and people don't realize that. So you're not actually getting a terrible amount in the banana, and you're getting it unless you're eating the peel, which I'm guessing you're not.
Yeah, probably not. Also, look at you going from a raw vegan to now eating bacon and grass-fed butter. It's so funny. I was raw vegan for a while too.
Okay.
And I was vegan for 3 years, and then I was raw vegan for a time, and then did about a million other like diets and restriction and that stuff. And I think, you know, whether you do this is such off topic, but we're here, we're having an organic conversation.
That's okay.
That I think when people start a vegan diet, they feel great because it's a lot of times it's the first time that they've eliminated some of these like processed foods, and they're starting to pay more attention. And so they start feeling really good. Their skin clears up. And, you know, whether you're doing it for an animal reason or environmental reason, that's different and power to you. But if you are doing it for a health-based reason, I just encourage you to do some research.
Yes.
And it's maybe baby steps. Like people think, okay, they need to cook up some chicken breast the next day. Oh my gosh, absolutely not. Start with like a sip of bone broth, like very, very small to work up to that. But the more research you do on like good quality animal foods, not just the abundance of minerals and nutrients that we're getting, but your absorbability, your ability to convert that, because a lot of these plant-based vitamins, minerals aren't as absorbable as the animal-based ones. And so I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but I'm guessing you've kind of made a little bit of this transition as well.
Absolutely. I was going to say, we're probably like the same person in terms of that. So yeah, raw vegan. And honestly, I didn't want to do that. I was just desperate. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like I just want my health to be back. And that seems to be working for people. I don't know. Let me do it. But I felt awful. I felt like I choked down my food. And I want to say that's another real quick tangent is joy in your food. I do not want to work with someone who's like, Atara, I hate coconut water. And I'm like, well, you got to do it. Your health needs it. No. We're going to find the foods that you love and you enjoy, and also that intuitively your body is drawn to, because it's drawn to that for a reason, right? So, where was I going with that? Why did we start? Oh,
veganism, food. Yeah.
So then that led me to when I started working with that naturopathic doctor I mentioned. She educated me on ancestral eating and Weston A. Price Foundation. And that really guided me to the importance of whole foods. Weston A. Price was a dentist in the early 1900s that studied indigenous cultures. He went around the world and said, what are these people eating that they have beautiful, wide smiles and no cavities? And what he discovered was not just about their dental health, but their overall physical health. They don't have disease. They're not having cancer. They're not having blood sugar issues. What's going on here? And he looked at some of the core foundational essentials in the diet. And one is healthy animal fats, like you said. One is eating nose to tail. So we don't want to, in our culture, we just eat muscle meat. And that's okay. But also those organs have special vitamins and minerals that we're not getting from the rest of the animal. Now, I do not enjoy eating liver. I probably, never say never, but I can't see a time where I'm going to enjoy the flavor of liver. So guess what? You can get liver or beef organs in capsule form and get them in that way. And that's how I get those, that nutrient. The other thing, so healthy fats, nose to tail, obviously eating those root vegetables or stuff from the earth is best. And also, to go back to butter, fat. Fat is so important for your mental health and your brain. Now, yes, good quality, healthy fats is what we want. So, animal fats like lard, butter is a great source. Tallow, avocado oil, duck fat, and the other, I do use olive oil. You have to be careful with the heat point. But all of this is going to offer your body that good cholesterol that your brain needs. Your brain is essentially cholesterol and made of fat. And so we need that in our diet.
Big time. And I think whether you know about the fats and the cholesterol, maybe you don't know anything about that. You're probably familiar with hormones and hormonal imbalance. And you know what starts that reaction of creating your hormones is cholesterol. And what creates healthy cholesterol is healthy fats. And so we need, and the bad cholesterol is generally, it's kind of a misargument that it's coming from actually carbohydrates, but we need the healthy fats to start this reaction. So I think another reason, if you are struggling with hormonal imbalance, fatigue, irritability, exhaustion, depletion, adrenals, thyroid, all these different things, we got to look at, are we consuming enough healthy fats in the diet? And just like the ones that you mentioned, and it could be as easy as grass-fed butter. Start putting that on your foods, on your vegetables. It is so flavorful. And I don't think, it's easy. I feel like I've balanced out, but I tend to be an all or nothing, black or white. And so I go from raw vegan, and then like years later, I'm looking at like keto, intermittent fasting. I didn't go to carnivore or anything like that. Now I feel very, very balanced. But it doesn't have to be, okay, now every single meal is saturated with bacon, butter, cheese, just in moderation, and making sure that each meal or snack has a little bit of that within there. It's represented. One other mineral that you mentioned, and maybe we can dive into it, copper.
Yes. Okay. Copper, very, very underplayed. Again, very synergistic. So copper is working with a lot of these other minerals in the body. And what we have an under focus on, so what we over focus on is vitamin D, right? Oh gosh, everyone needs supplement vitamin D, blah, blah, blah. Well, actually, when we look at vitamin D stores in the body, we're not actually measuring it right most of the time. And so we're not vitamin D deficient. We're just not able to utilize the vitamin D that we have. And so magnesium is required, by the way, to use that vitamin D. Are you familiar, Niki, with the work of Morley Robbins?
No, but I'm going to write that down.
Yes,
Morley Robbins.
Morley Robbins. And his institute is called Root Cause Protocol. And if you want to deep dive into magnesium, copper, he's the guy. He just has, and if you had him on, you could probably talk for like 10 hours with him. He's awesome. So he really talks about copper helps our body fight the aging process or oxidization. I can never say that word. Can you say that word?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to say.
Oxidization. Basically,
oxidation. Is it oxidation?
Oxidation. There it is. I'm trying to add another syllable. Oxidation in the body. I am. I tend to do that. Right. Yeah. So oxygen in the body, really what he says is creates exhaust. Okay. And that exhaust then produces like rust, if you will. And that is aging. So a great practical example, gray hair. Okay. When I see my copper dip, and I'll tell you what I take for copper in a second, my gray hair starts to pop up again. And I go, oh, I need more copper. So what I mainly take for copper is the beef liver is high in copper, and oysters is the second. Oysters have the perfect combination of copper zinc ratio that we need. It's almost like God knew what he was doing, right?
Oh, totally. Wait, yeah. And I want to pause that real quick because you talk about the ratio, and I know I've heard that, and I think specifically with copper. Can you tell us a little bit about why this ratio is so important?
Yeah, because again, in the body, when we get an imbalance, meaning too low or too high of any of these minerals or vitamins, it throws a system off. And so I'm trying to think of a practical example. Magnesium. So if you start supplementing with magnesium and you don't feel good, that happens once in a while for clients, okay? We know that you need more potassium, sodium to balance that. Okay, because those two work together. So same thing with zinc and copper is if you're getting too much of one, and typically actually people are getting too much zinc, then it's driving your copper down. Okay, so we need that appropriate ratio. And that is why most often I will recommend a food source first. Okay, now something like magnesium, like probably guarantee you're deficient in magnesium, and to get back on the right track, supplement with it. But it's not something you need to do forever. And with most things, I'm going to say do a food source first because it's a safe way to get that mineral or nutrient in. So with oysters, like beef liver, I do not enjoy consuming them. The texture gets me.
Totally.
So I take them.
Have you tried them baked? I'm not an oyster fan, but you haven't tried them baked?
No, have you?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I think like once or twice, but I'm not a huge seafood person and just like the boogery thing, but oysters, I know that's like a lot of people who don't like them raw. You throw some like Parmesan cheese, maybe thinly sliced jalapenos, like bake that in there, pull it out with like a squeeze of lemon. A lot of people do hot sauce. I don't know why I'm like making like, I kind of wish I liked them because I know the benefit, but that could be something to try out is baked oysters.
I love that idea. Yes. Okay. And I love Parmesan cheese, and Parmesan cheese is hitting that calcium. Just like to go back to the sweet potatoes, right? Like that butter source on there is a hit. And then we're balancing intuitively in nutrition. We do this, right? Like meat with cheese, for example, that is providing, like the meat is high in iron and phosphorus. And then we have the balancing combinations of the vitamin K and the calcium in the cheese. And we put these together. Intuitively, our bodies know, I want that. I like that together. And so like you're saying with the baked oysters, probably that Parmesan cheese on top and that squeeze of vitamin C is a great combination of nutrients that actually tastes good. It's a texture thing you said though for you.
Yeah, and I just like seafood, but if I were ever to have them for whatever reason, 100% would do baked. And you just load it up with enough toppings, and then that'll work. But I'm to your point too of like beef liver and all these things. I'm like, that's just not on my palate, and I'm trying to provide variety of, getting used to more bitter, getting used to, because even raising kids, like I don't do nose to tail at all. We are, I mean, we just started doing chicken thighs, away from the breast. And I'm like, that's such a minor thing. We need to be incorporating more parts of the animal, not just for, the sake of we're taking a life and how do we utilize it to the best ability, but you're getting so many different types of nutrients from the different animals. And so hopefully my move like into more of like a slower pace, kind of like farm life area will pivot me into that just a little bit. But, well, perfect. I love kind of that conversation around copper. I feel like we could easily do a part 2 of some of these other minerals. I know you have so much more expertise on a lot of different topics. So I'm pretty sure we'd love to have you back to kind of have a further discussion on that. But is there anything in today's call that you feel like we missed, that you feel like listeners need to know this information before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would say don't be overwhelmed by feeling like you have to do it all, right? So if you are leaving this as like, oh my gosh, there's so much I have to do. There's so many options of where to start. I would say pick one thing, right? Pick one thing to shift. And that's what I do with people throughout the 12 weeks that I work with them is we start with one thing and then we're going to build. And maybe that one thing where you're at is the grass-fed butter. For example, like I'm eating margarine, Atara, and I'm like, great, stop immediately and go get that grass-fed butter or go get those healthy fats in. Or maybe it's adding the magnesium, or it might be going, how can I discover and get creative around how to get more organ meats into our diets? That, what I love doing is that I have the trial and error of that. Right? So for example, we have a beef liver like loose powder and guess what, Niki, putting it over tomato sauce, it's nasty. It doesn't work. It doesn't cover up that flavor, right? So if you want to add it in for the kiddos, I would say put it in a soup that's cream based. Put it in your white sauce. Oh, pot roast too, maybe. Yeah. Or your white sauce. The dairy seems to cover it really well. Okay. Yeah.
That's good to know. And I like that. Right. Trial and error. See what works, because what works for you might be different than what works for somebody else. Absolutely. My daughter's obsessed with broccoli, but there's so many other kids who aren't. And so it's like trying, experimenting, being okay that if it doesn't work out, okay, well now we've just eliminated an option and that'll help us like, all right, let's find something else to do.
Yes. Yeah. And I'd say, if you are struggling, again, because I'm in mental health mostly, if you're struggling with your mental health and you're open-minded and understand that body-mind connection, start to look. Go and research, right? Like, what can I do on a physical level to move the needle here? Because when I have clients open to that and they start getting some of those minerals in, it's just so beautiful to see the change. Like, I've been struggling. L-theanine is a great example. This client is like, I've been struggling with so much anxiety and social anxiety, having conversations with friends. She's getting her own head. 1 week of adding L-theanine into her diet, and she came back. She's like, I'm really good. And actually, I haven't seen her for a while, so she must be doing really well.
Oh, totally.
Because she doesn't even need me anymore. And that honestly is the goal. It's like, let's get you right so you can go and live the life that you're meant to live.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, I think this conversation was so rewarding. It was fun having the conversation too. It's just like real world examples. You walk away now, you have a few recipes in your hand, and hopefully you have some practical steps that you can take to, if you're feeling just exhausted, depleted, your mental health is not at its best, you can start with some of these minerals, start applying them. I'll link in the show notes some of the ones that we have, or even the full formulations that have minerals included in them. And maybe we'll throw in some like of the bath salts and stuff in there. Some of the other recommendations you mentioned, Atara, we'll make sure to put in the show notes. Lastly, if people want to find more information about you, the work that you do, work with you one-on-one, where can they find you?
Yeah. So my favorite place to send people first is my Facebook and Instagram. And this is because if you're not in the space yet to hire me as a therapist or coach, there's lots of free information there. There's lots of things that you can go, like bacon, we said, or, red meat or whatever. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I can really add that in today. So you can find me. My business page is just my name, Atara Parkinson, on Facebook. And on Instagram, I'm at atara.parkinson. And please also just reach out through email if you have a question on a certain mineral you want to add, or if you're curious about, working one-on-one. I'm at ataraparkinson@protonmail.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here and giving us your time and your expertise. I hope listeners walk away with a ton of value.
Me too, Niki. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. I could talk about minerals for all day. So I love doing it. Thank you for giving me the space to do so.
Absolutely. So happy to. All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.